So we're going to speak to what we do at the end of our of this daily online meditation, but what we do it during most of our meditation groups and events, which is giving you a time to speak up, to share about actually what happened within your meditation sitting, to help you become more aware of what happened within your meditation sitting. Now that sounds very simple conceptually, but I think sort of emotionally, or it's much more complicated.
Right, right. Because this period of reflection that you do after you meditate is one piece of the puzzle, so to speak, or piece of the practice. It's not really a puzzle. But then talking about your experience and talking about it within a group here. How do you do that? Like, what are your intentions? What are your motivations? That's what Nellie and I would like to explore a little bit this morning in our talk.
And how do you decide? I mean, what goes on in that moment or moments of silence where we're waiting for somebody to unmute, or maybe even when someone's speaking, but you know there's more time. What's going on? How are you discerning? How are you deciding? You know, we don't know. I'm sure it's different for you at different times. I'm not suggesting it should be one thing, but it is curious. How do we go through that process?
Right. And if you don't tend to share or don't have an easy way to articulate your experience, you might just wait until that kind of pops up where you feel more comfortable, or like maybe this one I could share, or maybe I have some words for this, because there's also experiences that happen in meditation that are hard to language, hard to put words to, and you don't even know where to start with talking about your experience.
And as you say that, Linda, I think, well, maybe that actually is a good time to speak up because, you know, in the conversation, you might find words for it. Yet I understand why people would hesitate. Like, I'm going to go, duh, I'm not sure. You know, that's kind of a little embarrassing or whatever.
Right, right. Or then you would have the tendency to kind of make more of it, or make a story, make it make sense, because it's not very comfortable to bring something forward that you don't know yet, that it doesn't make sense to you yet, or there might be ways that you're unaware, and it's a kind of vulnerable place to be. You might feel a little bit ashamed after you speak. It takes some of that with you when you leave.
And I would say, I'm not sure this is true for everybody. In fact, I'm sure it's not true for everybody. Not much of anything is true for everybody. But, you know, in a drop-in group such as the Daily Online, it's kind of different than in groups where you know people. So, you know, that puts a possible another impediment in the way.
Yeah, I had this experience kind of early on, and um, I was, and this is something I hesitate to share, right, as a revenge fantasy or a gotcha kind of situation. But I was having a fight with a former Tai Chi instructor who had abused his power, and we were sword fighting, Tai Chi sword fighting, and I won. And this was something like, do I share this? What else could I learn from this? And why would I share it? So one of the things that kind of got brought out with it was a kind of samadhi state that I was in. I was very absorbed and very focused and able to follow something all the way through. And I didn't leave with wanting to go hurt the person. I didn't leave with the revenge. The revenge actually dropped.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of dreams and those kind of what are called we call samadhi states, those altered states of consciousness are a lot like dreams. And often when we sort of play out things in our dreams, we don't have to play them out in our waking life. They're sort of worked through.
Yeah.
And that's what it sounds like you're kind of describing. But it turned out it was a good thing to speak up about it.
I
Yeah.
felt better after speaking up about it, because if I didn't, I think I would have left feeling like I'm full of anger, or what was that about, trying to interpret it more than actually see it from a meditative process, what was happening, not just the content, but also the process of what was going on with me.
Yeah, yeah. Of
How
course,
about you now? Oh,
well, it could have gone well, I can't think of a specific, so
okay. Okay.
don't put me on the spot.
Okay. You got it.
Okay, but it could have gone the other way for you, or it goes the other way, I think, for people sometimes is they do share something like that or different, but something they're hesitant, and then they feel bad afterwards. They kind of feel almost like a bad aftertaste or a kind of like shame. And it seems to me the people I've observed where this is more common, if they keep sharing over time, that kind of dissipates.
Right.
But you never know for sure how you're going to feel afterwards. I guess that's really my point. So it's a risk. It's a risk. But as we become more comfortable with our inner world in meditation, the risk gets less.
It does. It does. You had brought in this differentiation between an internal processor and an external processor, and that people who speak about their experience and tend to feel better about it are more of an external processor, and those who do this internally are at risk more to not feel comfortable after they've shared. And one of the directions that people have asked me is to ask a few questions, like, was anything visual in your experience today? Or was anything new or unexpected? And that this is easier to respond to when you're more used to just processing on your own internally.
So there are those periods of silence. We experience them on the daily online. I'd say I experience them more or less in every group I teach. Um, and um, and so I'm always wondering what's going on during those periods of silence, and I think all kinds of things are going on, different things for different people at different times. One thing that I often hear when I ask that question, because I sometimes do, is, oh, well, I feel like I take up too much time, so I didn't want to share again. That people are measuring how much time they've taken, not, in some kind of vague way, which, on one hand, I think is considerate. But on the other hand, we need those people who are more prone to speak up.
Well, and there's times when there's a lot going on. Like you just have more coming up in your sittings and it's more active and there's a sense of ease of being able to talk about your experience and a desire to do so. I mean, it's really hard if you don't want to talk about your meditation sitting to force yourself to do it. And we're really not asking people to do that. I think we're going more in the direction of really being more aware of when is it possible? When might it help you to trust talking about your experience with this group will lead to something positive and wholesome? And start to be more aware of your motivations and intentions for talking or not talking.
And I know, Linda, you've been, we started this with always having 10 minutes of sharing at the end, but you've switched it out on Mondays to 20 minutes, and sometimes we do 15. And we wonder, is 10, is that, what's that like? Is it better to have more time? Does it feel easier when you're not time crunched or not? It's just different. Oh, we don't know. We don't know a lot here, but we're going to ask you to
Yeah,
speak about some of this at the end today. We're going to do something a little different, so maybe we'll know a little more.
right, right. We'll have that time for a conversation about it as well as your meditation sittings. So we'll probably have about 15 minutes today.
So shall we meditate then?
I think it's time.
All right. Well, I think I'm the bell ringer today, so that means I think we'll meditate for about 25 minutes. And of course, I will ring the bell at the beginning and the end, and you'll turn off the recording, Linda.
Oh, you are so right.